So we have a KTM 690. It's a 2012 model, and we're going to be taking off the existing slave and replacing it with an Oberon slave cylinder. And in generally speaking, it's a good upgrade. I'll explain that why as we go through the video. I'm going to start by taking off this casing. There's a bracket underneath with some spacers and bolts and the slave cylinder itself. I should take all those pieces off, and then I'll lay them down how they came off, because I should be in the way of the shot. So if you bear with me while I do that. Underneath this bracket, as I said earlier, there are some spacers. They have like a diameter that fits in a recess on the back of this plate, and you can easily drop them. So best thing to do is, once you're ready to take the bolts out, is just hold it back, remove the two bolts, both the same length, take it away from here, and there's the two spacers, and you can see the short one is on the top of the bracket and the longer one's on the bottom. This one, in actual fact, has been put on wrong once before, and it squashed the end where it wasn't lined up with the hole when it was done up. So you'll have to watch out for that, putting it back. I normally put a little dab of grease on them, stop them keep falling off. So that's the way the spacers were. You'll be able to see that when you remove yours. And we're now going to take the slave cylinder itself off. I'd already taken the hydraulic line off and screwed it into another slave to stop us losing the fluid, but normally before you remove the final bolt, what you do is you pop the spanner on, just crack off the joint but not take it out, otherwise you'll lose your fluid, and then just nip it very, very lightly so you can undo it when it's off the bike. So I'll finish taking that bolt off. On this particular bike, it's an Allen bolt on that one. Obviously he's been off a few times before for different reasons. That's why that spacer's damaged, I guess. So that's the stock slave cylinder, which actually has also got the gasket missing. We don't need that anymore, so we're going to put that to one side. Obviously when you take one off, if it hasn't been off previously, it could be full of fluid, so you just might want to pop it in something as you take it off to save it going over your workshop floor or whatever. So we've now got the slave cylinder off, and we've exposed everything that we need to work on. This one I have not too long ago cleaned it up, because I was, to be honest, going to start a video a little while ago, but things got in the way. So we're now ready to fit the new slave cylinder. There's nothing special you need to do. Obviously just have a look at this area, make sure it's not full of oil that might be leaking through from the engine. Just a visual inspection, a clean up, and then at the moment this slave cylinder, as I said, I'd undone that with a spanner and then nipped it back up, so we should be able to just get hold of that, and now it should just come undone relatively easily. There you go. Right. But before we put the new slave cylinder on, which comes packed, this one's going to be an orange one, with a new bleed nipple and a bleed nipple cover, which you just put in finger tight for now, if it's not already installed. And then there's installation instructions. Have a good read through those and keep them to hand. So if you read them right through before you start, that will give you a good indication of what you're going to do. The other thing is that some models will have a hydraulic line that screws into the slave itself, and some will have a line that has a banjo bolt with 2 sealing washers. If you've got this type, you won't actually be using the sealing washers, and you keep them in your toolbox for something else in the future. Let's say in the box we also have the sealing washers, and we have a mounting gasket. We're not going to need the sealing washers on this bike, but we will need the gasket, so I'll remove that, open the bag and get it ready to use. It's easier to put the gasket on the slave cylinder, so the side that's green goes outward and goes against the slave. Okay? Put that to one side for a minute, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-fill this, and I'm going to do that by pushing the piston in and holding it down. Then I'm going to drip fluid in while I slowly release the piston, and that will allow me to pre-bleed it before I actually put the line back on, and save an awful lot of time and fluid. That's the theory. We'll just get the fluid. This is best done with a syringe, little plastic syringe of some type, but I've left it in the other factory, and I'm going to try the same way that others might try at home, and that's just drip it in and release the piston back as it fills. So I'm just popping oil in until I see it fill the thread, and I'm bringing the piston back a little bit by releasing my thumb, and I'll continue doing that, so that I'll spill it. Yep, I should have prepared for this better. You can let the piston go completely, it won't come out. So now I'm just very, very gently pumping it backwards and forwards, just watching for any air bubbles. Don't know if you can see that. See, I've got a couple then. Oh, so I've got to all the air out there. I'll just re-top it. Okay, so that's filled up now, no air in it. So the trick now is I'm going to take the line off of here, off of this slave cylinder, introduce it to that one so I don't lose too much oil out of the slave cylinder itself. So now I've made that fairly loose. I should be able to do that one-handed. Like that. Hold that one level. Oh, that's not a very good thread on that bolt. This one, of course, will have oil in it. So I should set it down in such a way as it doesn't go everywhere, hopefully. Pop the lead on fairly instantly to the next slave cylinder, the one that we're replacing it with. Again, until it's just finger tight, because there's no pressure going to be introduced yet. I'll grab hold of my slave cylinder gasket, and the small amount of fluid that's now leaked onto that will actually help that stick in place and lube it a little bit to improve it clamping against the engine. So that's that fitted so far. Now obviously I'm going to swivel that round, pop on the engine, put in the one bolt that we had that was holding that one on, just for the minute. That'll obviously help keep the gasket in place too. We're going to get it in the little area that it fits, and it is quite a tight fit, so a little bit of patience is required. And if you've got eyesight like me, you'll have to remove your glasses to see the bolt hole, which is there, and then we will just get the thread literally started, end on with the Allen key, just in case if you cross thread it you can feel it's not quite right. I'll get that in the recess if I can. That's going in nice and loosely, so I've obviously got the thread bolted in square. Then we can push that square. Just making sure it's not locked. Oh, there we go. So I can just feel now there's a bit of pressure on the push rod where the piston's out. That will push back in once we do all the bolts up, and it will settle the piston in the correct place. So now we're going to be putting that plate back on with these spacers. So as you remember, short spacer at the top, long spacer at the bottom. And again, just to watch that it doesn't drop off, we put the bolt through it and keep it in its recess. And the same with that one. We can then line them up with the two holes that should be lined up well enough for us to pop that in with our fingers. And the other one. I'm just making sure that that spacer stays against the plate so that the little step is inside the plate itself. You do get another opportunity to check when it's closer. You can just sort of wiggle it around a bit and look down there, and you can see that it's gone in the plate, which that bottom one has. So is the top one. So I'm just going to nip them up, finger tight for now, just to square up the slave cylinder before we do the final tightening. So I'm happy that's all gone square. I'm going to tighten these an equal amount and then finally nip them up. They don't need to be extremely tight, as long as you can feel it go solid against the engine. There will be in your KTM manual, there will be a torque setting for that, but I've done so many of these now, I've got what I think is quite a good feel for it. So next I shall be taking the reservoir cap off of the master cylinder, and I shall be cleaning it, putting some fluid in, and then starting the bleeding process. So before I do that, I'm just going to stop for a minute, go and get some rags. So the image on the screen at the moment is showing the tools that I used on this particular installation. Combination spanner of 8mm, 10mm and 11mm. Also a socket, 8mm socket on a wrench with also an extension, makes life a little bit easier. A clear tube for the bleeding. Crosshead screwdriver for the removal of the reservoir cap. And two Allen keys, 4mm and 5. 4mm for the outer casing, 5mm for the odd slave cylinder bolt that I had on this particular bike. Okay, now we're ready to actually do the bleeding. As I said, I've moved the camera so you can see the bars as well as hopefully the bleed pipe. So I've put a clear rubber tube on the bleed nipple. After I fitted a spanner on the bleed nipple, you can't get the spanner on after the pipe unfortunately, so it's best to do it that way. The cap's off, as you'll see here. Here's the rubber bellows. It was quite dirty, so I've cleaned it, and that is now ready to go back on with a little bit of oil with the cap and the screws. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to top up the master cylinder, which is quite low. I'm probably going to fill it right up, and then it will take a few goes of pulling the lever in, holding it to the bar, undoing the bleed nipple to let the air out, lock it back off, release the lever slowly. So I'll start with topping it up. As I say, this bike takes mineral oil, but you will need to check in your manual or on the reservoir cap. Unfortunately this one's got an aftermarket one and it's not marked, but I know this one's mineral because I checked. So we top that up almost to the top. You will find that when you have finished, it only needs to be half full, the master cylinder, because the rubber bellow sinks into the oil and does raise the level. So when you are doing the bleeding process, you'll need to bring the level down a bit when you've finished. Otherwise, when you put the rubber bellows in, it then floods out the top of the cylinder, which is a bit annoying. But I'm just putting some tissue there in case of any spills. Just stop it dripping. So that's topped up. We've got our pipe on, we've got our spanner ready. So we're going to start off, first of all, with getting the air out. So we'll do a full press. You'll find there'll be no pressure probably. You're under the bleed nipple. We'll let that go very, very slowly. Now obviously did quite a good job of topping this up because it's immediately come out with oil, which doesn't happen very often. But I should do that probably 3 times, checking I don't see any air. I'm not getting much oil out yet, so it probably is getting air. Well, that bit, quite a bit come out then, you can probably see it around here. And now before I go any further, I'm going to check the master cylinder level. I normally do it stood up, but because I'm trying to keep out the way of what I'm doing, it's easier to stood at the side of the bike and pull the lever, open the bleed, holding the lever still home, lock the bleed nipple, release it, and you can watch the master cylinder at the same time. That is about halfway at the moment. And as I say, this is quite unusual, but I might be lucky enough to get away with one more bleed on that, which will bring the oil level till about right. Oh, there's a little bit more air then. The lever does feel pretty good. I'm just going to make sure by topping that cylinder up, and I'll probably do another 3 bleeds for the sake of the small amount of fluid. Plus it'll help you see the process if you're not familiar with it, which I try and remember to talk through as I'm doing it. So it looks like we can get away with 3 pumps quite easily. So we're going to, the bleed nipple is locked at the moment. We're going to pull the lever right to the bar. Yeah, there's good pressure there now, right to the bar. We're going to release that pretty much completely. You can see as soon as the fluid moves. Lock it off, release the lever, allow this to draw in more fluid. Do it again. Oh, we actually got some come out then. And our 3rd time, get about 3 good pumps before you need to worry about putting extra oil in. So we'll have a look. Yep, that's ready for the bellows to go in. It's a shame I can't show you every single angle all the time like you can with yourself, but as you can see the oil coming out. We've now done 6 pumps on that and I'm getting no air at all. So that pre-filling process really does save you a lot of bother. So we're now going to refit the bellows itself. We'll leave the paper there just in case some does pop out. Looks about right. While you've got your bike upright doing this slave cylinder install, and it's something I did off camera and I thought it was worth telling you, is that when you've got your bike propped up like this, which is the best way to do this job without losing too much fluid out of the master, but while you've got it there, do double check your engine oil level and make sure it is not above the maximum mark at all. Because what you can get, and we've had a few customers have it, is that if your engine oil is too high, and this is especially the case on older or other slave cylinders, you can find, if the engine oil level is too high, and you do a lot of fast riding and the engine gets very hot, as the oil expands it can force its way past the bearing in the clutch, or this will only happen if the oil level is too high, and then you can get an effect on your slave cylinder. And in really bad cases where someone was racing their bike, they actually got some of the gearbox oil, engine oil, up into the master cylinder. Well, that's not normal, and if that's happening, suspect your engine oil level, clean the system out, re-bleed it, all should be good. And that, believe it or not, is the job finished. We will, of course, it's outside, it's actually icy and snowing at the moment, but in a few days I will give it a test ride when the weather's a bit clearer, and perhaps I'll do a little video of that showing you the function of it working. But I've got no reason to doubt anything because we've got full clutch pressure there. It's still quite light, very responsive, and that's pretty much the job. If there's any other little tips that I think of while I'm finishing the video and editing it, I will put them in.